over the years, there's been all these different sales trainers and mentors and gurus who've all come up with their own process for mapping out the sales conversation. The essential stages or the 5 essential steps that a sales conversation's got to go through. And that's, it's great because it's absolutely essential. There are absolutely fundamental steps that a sales conversation needs to go through in different stages. So when it comes to, mapping out a sales conversation, I don't want to, go and, reinvent the wheel and give it a whole bunch of my own language and say it's these 7 things or these 12 things or whatever it is. However, I do want to make sure that I give you the right information so that you can actually plan out a conversation in a way that's logical and rational and will actually get you to the outcome that you're looking to get to with your prospects. So we're going to look at a handful of the most essential stages of the conversation, and I want you to think about these stages not so much as like a stage of the conversation just to tick off, but think of it as an emotional experience for your prospect. Because you can do the section perfectly, however, if they don't get the emotion of it, then you can't move on to the next stage because you're not done with this one. So what I'm going to share now is the most essential emotional experiences that your client has to have in order to get from just someone new who you've just met right through to someone who's buying off you. Now this may be over one conversation, maybe a number of conversations, and whichever it is, here's the process. It could also be on the phone, it could be face-to-face, it could be in text and written, it could be from stage. Now every single one of those environments or genres have very different approaches, different energy that you bring to them, different kind of things, different language and framing. However, there'll be a few things that are going to be really quite consistent across all the board, and they're the ones that we're going to talk about, which is the emotional experience for your prospect. And this is going to be mostly relevant to people who are actually having face-to-face conversations or over the phone conversations. So if you're actually speaking to someone and hoping that they're going to buy from you if they're the right prospect and they're going to become your client, then that's what this is about. So, what are the stages? We're going to look at half a dozen. The first one that is the most important, it's the most essential, it's the one that most amateurs do really poorly, is the initial set of words that come out of your mouth, that first 9 to 15 words that come out of your mouth when you first meet someone, when they first answer the phone, or when you first walk into the room. That, the old adage is you don't get a second chance at a first impression. So that first impression, the icebreaker, the pickup line, the conversation starter, whatever you want to call it, those initial words are absolutely critical. So best tip for you here, because there's so many ways you can do this. You can use humor, you can use power and authority, you can use trust and rapport, you can use innovation, you can use mystique and intrigue, you can use alarm, alert, like panic buttons. There's so many different ways to start a conversation that will get traction. The question is, which of those ways is right for you naturally, and also which is most appropriate for your prospect in the situation that you're in, right? So to find out more about those, I'm not going to go on and have a huge discussion about it. I'd encourage you to check out Sally Hogshead. She's got a program online called How to Fascinate. So go to howtofascinate.com. I'll put a link up here so you can check it out. And do a test. It's like $30 or something. And she will send you an email every day for the next week and every week for the rest of your life about what is so fascinating about you. It's really cool. I love getting emails from Sally. And she did she's done a 10 years. She said, you've got a bit of an interesting story. She said, with a name like Hogshead, growing up, you get an interesting perspective on life through high school, right? Kids can be cruel. And she said what that's led her to is a 10-year study now as a woman into what it is that makes someone fascinating or not. When you meet someone and you just go, wow, tell me more, this person's just fascinating. What is it about them? And other people you meet and you go, well, I don't know what it is about them. Right? So Sally wanted to know if she could break it down scientifically and work out what is it that makes someone fascinating, and she's absolutely done that. So she talks about the 7 triggers to fascination. And she says every one of us will have a predominant trigger that we use all the time, naturally and effortlessly. We'll have a secondary one, and if we put a matrix of 7 here and 7 there based on your primary and your secondary, that will give you a 1 in 49 personality archetype that she's designed, and she goes into great detail about that, and it's fantastic how she does it. So for you as as becoming a salesperson and really wanting to sell more and have a bigger impact in your business and your life, this is of critical importance. Those initial words, what the first thing out of your mouth when you meet someone or when you greet them or when they answer the phone, is so important. And if you can use Sally's work as a clue to what's naturally fascinating about you, it's going to give you a huge head start, because when you open your mouth, people will go, really? Tell me more, right? It's a great way to start a conversation. So I'm not going to do any more on that, but definitely check out How to Fascinate from Sally Hogshead. Okay, the next bit that comes immediately after the first bit is this area where, what happens next in the conversation? Hi, how you doing? Great to connect. Then you want to frame up the conversation. This is all about positioning. It's about letting them know what you'll be covering, the agenda, what's on the table for discussion and what's not, framing up any products, any prices, any time frames, and this is actually the time to handle any potential future objections, not after an hour of conversation. Right? We'll get into more detail, it all makes sense a little bit shortly. This is the time to frame the conversation from a point of view of the authority that you bring, the relevance that you bring, why you're even talking to them in the first place, what's in this for them. This is where they lean in and go, I want this, tell me more, right? And that is so essential, it's so important to get that done well and get it done properly. So all I'm encouraging you to do here is just put some time into considering what's your opener, what's your icebreaker, right? What's your framer? What's the purpose for the call? What's the agenda? What's the, what is it that we're going to be discussing, and why is that really valuable and important and relevant and urgent for them to look at right now? Okay? So that makes up your first chunk of the conversation, your icebreaker and the framing. The next part, from there, you're going to move pretty naturally into actually having a conversation with someone. Right? Now remember, 2 ears, 1 mouth. So that the whole thing here is listen at least twice as much as you speak. Now I'm training here, so it's very different. So I'm going to speak a lot and you're going to listen a lot. But if we were having a conversation, you'd hear me saying very little and I'd be listening a lot and asking key questions. So the whole, the whole body of your conversation is made up of you asking key questions to lead them into the next emotional phase of the conversation. So the body of the conversation is made up of you asking key questions to lead them into the conversation that you want to be having. So look at what are going to be the key questions that you're going to be asking. Now the emotions that you want them to feel at this point is really getting an experience of the situation that they're in and the problem that they've got, the pain that they're in. Now we don't want to be unethical and create a problem or pain for them that doesn't exist. If you follow what John Adams talked about in the marketing, the only people you should be talking to anyway are people who are putting their hand up right now saying, I'm that guy or I'm that girl with that problem right now, looking for that solution, please help me, right? There should be, that's all about sales qualification, which we come under, what John talks about in his marketing. So assuming that's all been done correctly, we're ready for the next stage, which is the actual sales conversation, which is what we're talking about here. So at this point, we don't need to create any pain that they don't already have. We don't need to create any problems in their life that they don't already have. What we're doing is exploring the pains and the problems that they do have. And I knew a real estate agent once who, real estate agents, their biggest sale isn't to sell a house to a buyer. The buyer's going to buy the house that suits them. Their biggest sale is to sell to the vendor, list your property with me. So that's where the sale is made for a real estate agent, because if they've got a lot of listings, people are going to buy the houses, right? It's kind of how it goes. Different markets, of course, things always vary, but that's generally how the industry works. So I knew a real estate agent who, when he'd go to a listing appointment, he knew if he could make the vendor cry, he was probably going to get the listing. Now, is that what we're actually looking for? Do we want to actually create the being that upset that they actually cry? Well, kind of yes, actually. Now, it's not because we're assholes, we're mean people, because we're not. We really want to help these people, but what we know is they're not going to make a decision to transform this area of their life until they're in enough pain to do so. The human brain is wired to stay the same. It wants to survive and maintain the status quo, even if the status quo isn't very good. Even if what you've got now you're not actually happy with, you're going to keep doing that until you get, something happens that makes it completely unacceptable and you realize that this situation I can't have this in my life anymore because I'm in so much pain. I've got to get out of this, right? So that's the first thing, is to look at the problem they've got, look at the pain that they've got, look at the situation that is just completely unacceptable for them. Then we want to explore, what would you like it to be like, right? What are your goals? What are your ambitions for the future? Over the next 6 to 12 months, if anything was possible, what would you love to achieve? So you've got all these questions around, how bad is it now? And again, not making it worse than it is, and helping them to really look at how bad it actually is. And then, letting them paint a picture for you of what it really looks like. And again, 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? So lots of listening, lots of key questions, maybe some illustrative stories at some point just to help to keep the conversation moving. But mostly, once you get to this phase, they're on a roll and they're sharing, pouring their little hearts out. They are absolutely, it's almost counselling, right? It's definitely coaching. And you're helping them work through their issues to get clear on where they are and where they'd like to be. That's really it's really the main part of all this. Where are you now? Where would you like to be? So once we've got that, and if we miss the emotionalness of, this is disgusting, I can't be here, I'm almost in tears, maybe I am in tears, and this would be so fabulous, this is exactly what I want, this is all my dreams come true, absolutely, I have to have this. If you miss the emotion on that, don't move on until you get this, because the conversation's not going anywhere, okay? So at this point, they're ready to change. They're ready to make what I call a transformational decision. A decision that's going to transform the course of their life. It's a decision that says, not, I'm going to buy you a thing. That's not the decision we're looking for. The decision we're looking for as transformational salespeople is, I cannot accept this situation in my life anymore. I'm going after this thing that I want. No more excuses. And they're at the point now where finally they're going to break through, they're going to believe in themselves and back themselves and invest in themselves and do whatever it takes, because you've been a good coach and a good facilitator and facilitated this conversation, and they are now ready to actually step up and transform their life. They've got the belief and they've got all the things that they need to actually do that. The transformational conversation, the transformational decision is such an important step, such an important phase. There's a massive emotional shift for them. Because like we said before, once they've made that decision, they've cut off any other possibility from their reality, and that's the path they're walking, that's what they're doing, that's what they're choosing, right? Now once they've made that decision, you're their ally in this. They're your client, they're coming under your protection. So you're going to help them with the next phase, which is exploring the options. There's a whole bunch of different things that they could do. Now that they've decided, I'm not having this, I'm having that, great, well how are we going to create this situation in your life? You're over here, there's a big gap in the middle, how are we going to bridge that gap? Now, there's a whole bunch of things they could do. They could just go for it and try and do it on their own. They could buy your program or your course or your mentoring or whatever it is that you're selling, and that could help them do it. They could go and buy someone else's thing, right? At this point, they trust you enough that they're going to say to you, what do you think I should do? You're going to say to them, what do you think you should do? Right? And you're going to help them to make a decision that's going to serve them best. Now, at this point in the conversation, it's highly likely that the thing that's going to serve them best will actually be to buy your thing, right? Because that's why you're having this conversation in the first place. That's why they put their hand up to actually want to engage with you. That's the whole point, right? So at this point, it's highly likely that they're going to go, absolutely, I need this thing, that you framed up in the first place when you first started this conversation. So they knew exactly what the thing was, not all the details of it, but they had enough information that it was a course or a program or 12-month coaching or whatever. They knew the price, and that was all right up front. And now it's like, you know what, that would be perfect for me, right? So it's how do you frame it up and position that in the conversation without actually pitching it to them and saying, hey, you're going to buy this thing, right? Because at that point, they're going to say no. But at this point, they're going to say yes. And you're going to invite them in to become your client. All right. So the next part, which is really critical, is actually planning out the action steps. So now you've considered all the possible solutions to get from here to there, and now you're going to plan them out and say, all right, so this is the breakdown of what's actually going to happen. At this point, you can do some talking, right? Because you're going to explain to them, you're my client now, you're under my protection, here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to do this and this and this for you right now. And I need you to do this and this and this for me, right? It's a bit of a dance. I'll take a step, you take a step, you take a step, I'll take a step. You just want to map out really, really clearly exactly what's going to happen. So maybe it's, I'm going to send you an invoice. You're going to pay it. I'm going to send you the username and password to log into the system, or like whatever it is, all the little detailed steps. I'm going to send you an email that's going to got all the details of this conversation and your next steps in it. Right, look out for that email. That might be it. Or you're going to give me a credit card and I'm going to process it, and the system will send you out an automated receipt, or your process. Whatever the next steps are, make sure that they're so clear on that. That's it. So this part around the transformational decision, considering the solutions, and then planning out the action steps. Those 3 chunks is what in typical transactional sales they talk about as closing the sale. Right? We're going to close the prospect. We're going to close the door on them, and closing questions and all this kind of really heavy-duty language. And when we look at it from this point of view, what have we actually closed? Like nothing, right? What we've actually done is had a beautiful conversation and opened up a relationship with an amazing future. So from my point of view, there's really nothing closing here. There's nothing closing about this. We're opening up a relationship, we're opening up a conversation, we're opening up an amazing potential future for them. That's what this is all about, all right? So we can let go of all that worry about I've got to close my prospect and we're just having a conversation, 2 normal human beings helping each other out. And then the next thing that we typically see in transactional sales, the old model, is this thing about handling objections. And it's all the ninja tactics to like sidestep and deal with their thing and turn it on themselves, and you hear all this kind of amazing language from people. And really, if you've done all the steps right, there's not going to be any objections. There might be some logistics to work through. They might have some, how we're going to, I've got to get the funds together to pay for this, or got to get the time off work, or I've got to talk to my wife, and there's a whole bunch of ways we can, we can have different conversations about each of those things. And essentially, you're just helping them plan the action steps to get from where they're at to where they want to be. So if you keep that in mind, this whole thing about closing and handling objections and all that, you can kind of relax on all of that and stick to this process. Just makes it so much easier. At this point, you've invited them to be your client. They have been so grateful that you are, because they can see how you're going to get them from the pain that they're in to the pleasure that they want to be in. Fantastic scenario. So the last thing left to do is this thing I call the eloquent send-off. It's a celebratory demonstration of goodwill that definitively concludes this particular interaction, right? We don't want to get in the scenario where you've ever been in this situation where we're done with business and then we start chit-chatting again, right? And you open up the conversation and then they start questioning the decision they've just made, and you talk yourself out of a sale, right? I've seen lots of people do that. So it's like, once we're done, we want to wrap it up, but we don't want to just say, all right, I've got your money now, bye, and hang up, or just stand up and walk out of the office or out of the cafe that you're in. You want to do it in an eloquent way. So a lot of different ways to do it, and I just want you to consider what's going to be most appropriate for you in the sales setting that you're in, with the prospects you're going to be talking to. How are you going to wrap up the conversation when you're all done? A number of different ways. I'll give you a couple of examples. One that John uses really, really well is a congratulations. And it's such a big, beautiful, heartfelt congratulations. There's such enthusiasm and energy in it. You've just made a decision that's going to transform your life. You're my client now. I'm going to take care of this. We're going to get you from here to there. And I'm so impressed. I'm so proud of you. Congratulations. Well done. See you later. Right? And off he goes. And it's just lovely how he does that. My favourite is a thing I call the best thing. So I say, look, out of this whole conversation that we've just had, this whole big adventure that we've been on, the emotional roller coaster that you've just experienced, there's been tears and we've been laughing, and I've shared those stories and you've shared that beautiful thing, and there's been great insights and distinctions. So out of all of this, what's been the most valuable, or the biggest distinction, or the greatest takeaway, or just the best thing out of all of this for you? Right? And they'll share whatever has been the best thing. They'll say how amazing it was, that story I told about the other guy who was in a similar situation and how he had that breakthrough. Or they'll share about how wonderful it is that finally they've drawn a line in the sand and they're never going to settle for less than they can be, and now they're going to go and, pursue their destiny. Whatever it is the best thing for them. Very often you'll hear people saying things like, it's just wonderful that to find someone who believes in me. Because, very few people have the courage to stand in the fire as people are facing their demons and their greatest fears, and actually be with them through that, and not back away from that heavy-duty conversation, right? So whatever their best thing is, they'll share their best thing. And then I'd say, would you be happy if I shared my best thing? And my best thing typically from the conversation is an attribute or an element of their personality that I really admire. Right? Just a beautiful way to give them a genuine compliment. I explain why I admire those things. It might be their passion, or their enthusiasm, or their commitment, or their courage to face this, or their decisiveness on being able to take action and seize a great opportunity. Whatever it is that I admire about them, and I'll share that with them. And of course, it's got to be genuine. You can't BS anything like that, as you can't with any of this the whole way through. So that concludes this interaction. I hope that's been valuable for you. I'm sure it has. Now you know all the elements of this conversation. So I'd encourage you to put some time into that. Watch this video over, and I hope you've been making notes the whole way through, and look at, all right, what am I going to say at each stage of the conversation? Then, what I invite you to do is shoot me an email. It's patrick@resultsplatform.org, so patrick@resultsplatform.org, and send me your best thing from this whole video series that you've been watching, from all the work that we've done together and all the stuff that you've been through. What for you has been the most insightful, the biggest distinction, the greatest insight, the most valuable, or just the best thing out of all of this for you? I would love to hear from you. Send me your best thing. I'll send you my best thing. We'd love to have a conversation with you about how we can serve you better in any of the stuff that I've talked about. If you're wanting to get some more detail on it, like I run talks, and we've got other video series that go into more detail about this. We run live coaching programs. There's a whole bunch of different ways we can do that. But for now, I just wanted to give you as much value as I could in the shortest possible time to really help you get this sales thing nailed. I hope that's absolutely worked. I'm sure it has. Thank you so much for watching. It's been such a great pleasure and a joy for me to share what I'm clearly passionate about, what I love, and one of my favorite conversations in the world to have, which of course is transformational sales. And my encouragement to you is to go and use this for good. This stuff's really, really powerful, and you can use it for evil, of course, or you can use it to actually go and make a positive impact in your community and your clients' lives. That's my wish for you and my prayer and my hope. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Patrick Woodcraft, Campaign Mastery Academy, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.